Hunter Biden's laptop, Trump, the Democrats, liberal media, everything in between, guys. So y'all remember when Donald Trump called out 60 Minutes for refusing to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story before the 2020 election, right? Lesley Stahl, the journalist who's supposed to represent the pinnacle of media integrity, had the nerve to say, we can't put on things we can't verify.
This is 60 Minutes. And we can't put on things we can't verify.
You won't put it on because it's bad for Biden.
We can't put on things we can't verify.
Leslie.
Oh, really, Leslie? You mean like the totally unverified Russian collusion stories that you pushed for years? But when it's about Hunter Biden, suddenly it's all, we need verification.
I don't have to discredit you.
And that's what
you've discredited yourself.
You told me that.
Leslie, you've discredited yourself. When you say that you're not going to cover Biden, you're going to ask him what flavor ice cream he has, okay? Instead of why did Hunter get $3.5 million from Moscow? Instead of why is an energy company paying your son $183,000 a month or whatever they're paying him, and he has no experience in energy. You know, you discredit yourself. I don't have to discredit you.
So this story about Hunter and his laptop, some repair shop found it. The source is Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani.
Give me a break, all right? So anyway, Trump obliterated her with this one line. You discredited yourself. And he wasn't wrong. I mean, Lesley Stahl was busy asking Joe Biden about his favorite ice cream flavor while ignoring the $35 million that Hunter Biden allegedly got from Moscow. Or how about the $183,000 per month that he was pulling in from an energy company despite having zero qualifications? And the laptop, Steve Bannon, Rudy Giuliani, they brought it forward. So the media immediately discredited it. Why? Well, they hate anybody who's associated with Trump. That's the real deal. In fact, the laptop wasn't just real, folks. It exposed some very shady dealings implicating Joe Biden himself.
And you're making this one of the hottest, most important issues in your rallies.
It's a very important issue to find out whether or not a man's corrupt who's running for president, who's accepted money from China and from Ukraine and from Russia.
All these
I think
things
that's
have
an
been
important
investigated and discredited.
It's incredible the way you can try and say this and sit there and look me in the eye and say it. He accepted money, his family, from Russia, from Ukraine, from China, and from other places. His brother, who didn't have experience, became a big builder in Iraq without experience. Take a look at what's going on, Leslie. And then you say that shouldn't be discussed.
I'm saying
it's the biggest scandal out there, Leslie, and you don't cover it.
Because it can't be verified.
You want to talk about insignificant things.
I'm telling you.
Of course it can be verified. Excuse me, they found the laptop. Leslie.
It can't be verified.
What can't be verified?
The laptop.
But instead of digging into that, the media just decided, oh, it's not worthy. It's not newsworthy. So Lesley Stahl, she even looked Trump in his eyes and straight up dismissed it, claiming that it couldn't be verified. Oh, but now we know it actually could. In fact, the New York Post had already published bombshell reports, but nobody cared because it didn't fit into their narrative. Now, if we go ahead and fast forward to today, Joe Biden has pardoned his son Hunter. That's right, guys. The same crimes Trump got impeached for wanting to investigate are now being forgiven with a presidential wave of the hand. And so what does CNN do? Well, they defended, of course. One commentator actually suggested that Donald Trump is out here planning firing squads and punishing his enemies.
You can defend it, but wasn't it a lie that he was not going to pardon him?
No, I believe the circumstances have changed. I think that we now have a president coming into office who's talking about firing squads, who's talking about running people around the country and making sure that everyone who's his enemy is going to be punished.
I mean, are you freaking serious, guys? Who's writing these scripts? I mean, the same folks who brought us the Russian Dozier hoax, perhaps? Now, if we go on over to The View, right? Oh, yes, The View, the channel, the show you guys all love so much. Whoopi Goldberg is on another level of delusion. She's got the audacity to say that it's Trump's fault that Biden lied and pardoned Hunter. Excuse me? Trump didn't make Biden's son take some shady money from Russia China and Ukraine?
I'd stop calling it a lie.
Okay.
Well, here's what it says. It's a precedent for all of us to open our eyes because we've elected someone who is in a similar situation, who didn't have a drug problem, who knew what he was doing, who clearly stood and said, I can do this. And he did it. So I think, for many, many reasons, this is very different than any other situation that we have ever dealt with.
Trump didn't make Biden hand out that pardon, but sure, go ahead and blame Trump on everything, because, like, why not? I mean, hell, Trump hasn't even been in office for about 4 years. And so then, of course, we can't ignore Jon Stewart. So Jon Stewart, trying to lighten things up with jokes about Hunter Biden's pardon. Yeah, John, you're funny, but where were you when it really mattered? You know what I'm saying? And so now that Biden's presidency is basically circling the drain, Jon Stewart basically decides to finally crack jokes about the laptop.
Democrats have a moral perch from which they can judge without shame, hypocrisy, or nuance.
Breaking news, President Biden has issued a pardon for his son, Hunter Biden.
Mother... We were so close.
Thanks for nothing, John. Nice with the timing, right?
Pardon is a narrowly written, precisely drawn farewell note of compassion for a loved one.
The pardon sweeping, covering offenses that Hunter Biden, quote, has committed or may have committed or taken part in over the past 11 years.
Years is a very specific and not rounded amount of time. So, Hunter, I'll give you a pardon. A few years, 5 years, 10 years. It needs to be 11.
So John's humor really just doesn't change the fact that the laptop revealed over a decade of questionable behavior. Meanwhile, over in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams, he seems to have found some common sense, finally. He's now echoing Trump on immigration here, right? He's saying criminals along with illegal immigrants need to go. Imagine that. Even Governor Kathy Hochul is jumping on the train, promising to personally call ICE herself if criminals are caught.
Those who are here committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. I want to sit down and hear the plan on how we're going to address them. Those are the people I am talking about, and I would love to sit down with the Board of Czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens.
But hold on. Isn't this what Trump was saying for years while being called a racist? I mean, it looks like the left is starting to finally wake up, but only because public opinion has ultimately turned against them. In fact, it's political survival, plain and simple. And so on the grassroots side, you got Scott Pressler. He's a guy who quietly is reshaping the political landscape here. So he flipped Pennsylvania red with his organization called Early Vote Action, proving that the GOP can win if they get their act together on early voting. Meanwhile, the media is busy obsessing over Hunter Biden's laptop. Pressler is out here actually making some real changes. So this whole saga is like this perfect storm of hypocrisy and madness. I mean, the media, the Democrats, even some Republicans have been exposed for playing games with the truth. Matter of fact, the Hunter Biden laptop story, once dismissed, it's now undeniable. Unbelievable, guys. Absolutely unbelievable. And the simple fact that Joe Biden just pardoned his son, I mean, I feel like that's just the cherry on top of this whole dumpster fire.
Joe Biden has very clearly said he would not pardon his son. He would not commute his sentence. How stark is this difference? I mean, how can Republicans keep making this argument now that Joe Biden has really put it out there?
Right? He's now been pretty emphatic over the last few days that he does not plan to pardon or commute his son. What that really is him saying is, I don't plan to use the powers of the office, the powers of the presidency, to provide private relief for my family. In a sense, he's staking out a pretty bright line between being, as he says, a president and a dad. And that's not just an emotional expression. He's, in effect, saying, I don't think that I don't have a right, even if it's legal, and God knows it must be tempting, to use this power in a way that is not available to so many other Americans facing similar kinds of struggles.
I think it's a big deal because it really undercuts the argument that this is rigged on the other side, right? Both things can't be true. And so I think the president, it's really hard for him to say, I won't pardon my son. I will not commute his sentence. How hard that is. It's also coming through that Biden's just a decent guy and a nice and a great father.
Exactly what Joe Biden said after Donald Trump's conviction, that we have to have faith in our judicial system, that no one is above the law, and that a jury of 12 ordinary people looks at facts, not political spin, and decides whether someone has broken the law. And the fact that he's going to respect this verdict, even though he could wipe it out with a stroke of a pen, even though he could have kept it from happening with a stroke of the pen, tells America what they need to know about the man who occupies the Oval Office.
And I feel like that just undercuts whatever the Republican argument here is about Biden rigging the system among the voters that will actually matter in this next election.
Well, there are three things there. I mean, number one, the conviction of Hunter Biden shows the system is not rigged. It also shows this is the way the rule of law looks. This is what it looks like when no one is above the law. And President Biden has also said, has said on the record that he will not use his pardon power to free his son if Hunter Biden gets a prison sentence. Now, there are some people who are skeptical about that, but I don't think there's any reason to doubt his word at this point.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one 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 is above the law.
It's a good thing Hunter Biden changed his name to No One, because it's crystal clear that he's above the law, which has made the Democratic Party along with their top officials look like complete fools. Now, speaking of fools, The View is losing its ever-loving mind with this blatant double standard that they continue to show. Because you know for a fact that they would forgive an ally for a crime. And they're the first ones to stand up for President Biden, even though many fellow Americans feel lied to. They're lying right to our faces, and these hosts, they say it's okay. And to question that is seen as offensive. Listen to how Whoopi Goldberg reacts to Alyssa as she questions this decision. And guys, I just want to say thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Let's jump in.
I respect it as a parent. I understand why he would do it, but I wonder to understand why lie about it for so long.
I'd stop calling it a lie.
Okay, why repeatedly say you're not going to and you do? And secondarily, for the part of this country, half of it that doesn't support Biden, doesn't know him personally, doesn't get to have phone calls, and they're just looking at a system that seems like it only benefits the people who are in power.
I'm going to say,
what precedent does that set?
Well, here's what it says. It's a precedent for all of us to open our eyes because we've elected someone who is in a similar situation, who didn't have a drug problem, who knew what he was doing, who clearly stood and said, I can do this. And he did it. So I think, for many, many reasons, this is very different than any other situation that we have ever dealt with. Because when we're talking about who gets a pardon and who doesn't get a pardon, this man, I think Biden had no intentions of pardoning Hunter. And I think the more stuff that went down, I think he said, well, why am I busting my behind to stay straight and do this when nobody else is, when no one else is doing it?
So first of all, guys, I'm not sure how Whoopi Goldberg defines a lie. President Biden, he stated on multiple occasions, I will not pardon my son.
With regard to the question regarding the family, I'm extremely proud of my son, Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. He's one of the brightest, most decent men I know. And I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision, and I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
This is a well-documented fact. I'm pretty sure they know it well. But then he goes back and he does the exact opposite of what he promised. That kind of sounds like a clear-cut lie. And as always, guys, they go back to blaming Trump. Trump's not even involved in this situation. To sit here and talk about the president-elect as if he had anything to do with this is insane. And this is the lunacy within the far left and mainstream liberal media. They're all in favor of accountability all the way up until it's them who's accountable, which goes to show that they're struggling to defend this decision from the president. Now, what's really alarming here, guys, is that they're saying that it's okay for Biden to do what he wants because Trump's doing it too. When in reality, Trump's been in multiple courtrooms defending himself. He wasn't pardoned, nor was he given an easy way out. Now, I also have to highlight what Whoopi Goldberg said at the end here. She said that President Biden probably wasn't going to pardon Hunter anyway, but he saw that everyone else was doing something crooked, so he decided to join in, which is basically admitting what the president did wasn't the cleanest of acts. Now, we'll get back to those guys in a second, but I want to show you guys Rachel Maddow for a second here. So here's Rachel Maddow's take as to why President Biden had a sudden change of heart. Watch.
It is true that President Biden had said he wouldn't pardon his son. And it may or may not be related, but would it change your mind at all if, after you made a pledge like that, the incoming next president then announced that he planned to remove the director of the FBI and install in his place someone who has literally published a hit list of people he wants to go after once Trump is back in power? There are 60 names on this list. This guy published it as an appendix, as Appendix B to one of his recent books.
Look, if you didn't do anything wrong, then face the courts. That's what Trump did, right? But the American people saw it for what it was: political persecution. It's one of the reasons as to why a lot of people voted for him back in the White House. Now they want to keep making this about Trump when it's all about Hunter Biden and his dad. And it's simple that the same rules don't apply when a Democrat faces justice, especially those at the top of the echelon.
I'm not sure why the pearl clutching is happening now, except that that's what folks want to do. But it seems kind of foolish. You kind of knew he was going to do it, given all that's happened, but maybe I'm just kooky.
So I see this one a little bit differently, and some of you know this, but I grew up with an immediate family member who was in and out of jail for addiction-related offenses when I was growing up, and now a decade later, clean, have their life together, serve their time, are still dealing with the consequences. Inability to vote at time, paying restitution, working to get your record expunged, not being able to be eligible for certain employment. Most Americans, if they face consequences for actions that they took, they're going to have to face them, and nobody powerful and politically connected is going to come sweep in and save them. And I think, this feeds the notion to a lot of this country that there's simply a different set of rules for folks in power. And when we sit here and we say a lot like, well, Donald Trump did X, Y, and Z, and how did he get elected? Because to a lot of this country, it just becomes noise. They think that if you commit crimes and somebody powerful and connected in D.C., right, left, center, Biden, Trump, you're going to be able to get away with it if you have someone on your side, and that's not how it is for everyday folks. Secondly, I take issue with lying about it. I wanted to ask him here when he came on The View, but the thought was he said so many times he wasn't going to pardon him. That, to me, is lying to the public. I felt bad for Karine Jean-Pierre that she repeatedly had to say that he wasn't going to pardon him. This is why people don't trust Washington. That's why they don't trust politicians. And I know a lot of us like Joe Biden, but I find it disappointing and bad for our institutions.
And I think this is what the justice system looks like with the left in charge. Just remember how Vice President Kamala Harris laughed when asked about doing drugs herself, despite her sending more than 1,000 people to jail in California for doing the exact same thing. At this time, she was the Attorney General in California, which goes to show that justice is selective, proving Alyssa's point. And I'm not saying that this doesn't happen with the right. Both parties should be held accountable for the things that they have done. But President Biden's pardon of Hunter Biden just destroys the entire notion of accountability. It also destroys a little bit of trust that some people had left for the people in power. But since they pushed him aside for this year's election, I think that the president has little to no love for his own party at this point. But I guess he set the precedent for our justice system too when he went after Trump in multiple legal cases. It also opens up the talk of violence against President-elect and some of his allies. Speaking of which, threats have already been made of President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet picks. Now, what's really shocking is that they all happen at the exact same time, suggesting that there is a clear effort to either harm or intimidate people who Trump chooses. Now, I covered this in a previous video, guys, that you definitely should check out. As always, thanks so much for hitting the like button. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Check out this video coming up here or our playlist down below, and we'll see you guys on the next one.